This first panel features, first of all, Eleanor Condon, who is the Development Officer for Triathlon Ireland in Munster. Many of you will recognise Eleanor as the Development Officer in Munster. As part of her role, she works with clubs, helping with their training for both junior and senior members, and is a fountain of knowledge for those starting out in sport, and the friendliest face, other than my own, that you'll see at the finish line of a race. She's a keen triathlete and a member of Clonmel Tri Club. Next up, we want to say welcome to Claire Tynan from Bell Park Tri Club. She is relatively new to the sport of triathlon. I think it was back in 2019 that she did her very first triathlon at the Vodafone City Tri. I think I met her there first. Originally a member of Waterford Tri Club, but she has since moved to Dublin as part of her work as a junior doctor, and she has joined the wonderful team at Bell Park since 2020. Ellen Ryan from Tritanium Triathlon Club is a member of West Dublin. Tritanium, I have to get that right, Ellen. An adventure seeker. She first got into triathlon having been encouraged to do so while climbing Kilimanjaro. There you go, with some triathletes. As a triathlete who is deaf, Ellen hopes to encourage and help others who have disabilities to enjoy and love triathlon as much as she does. So that's our first panel for tonight. Ladies, you are very welcome to our Women in Sport event. There's going to be no shyness on tonight's webinar. We're all friends here. We all want to learn from each other and help to inspire and inform our guests this evening. There's plenty of lads joining us as well. So just a nod to them to say thank you to them for joining us as well, to find out more about how you can support our women in sport and our triathletes as we make our way around the country for 2022. First question, girls. How did you decide that triathlon was the sport for you, and how did you decide to take it up? And Eleanor, I'm going to come to you to get the ball rolling.
As you say, Joanne, I started triathlon in 2015. My brother joined a local club, not Clonmel now. He joined Carrick-on-Suir Triathlon Club, which is down the road, and big time got into the idea of triathlon. And there was plenty from Clonmel that attended Carrick as well. So out of that stemmed Clonmel Triathlon Club. And my brother, lo and behold, caught my hand one day and brought me to one of their sessions. And when I tell you I was hooked, I was hooked. My background in swim, bike and run wouldn't have been massive. I was able to swim. Spinning classes was the height of my being able to cycle a bike at that stage. And running, no, I wouldn't run to the pub if you asked me to. But lo and behold, he brought me down and I fell in love with it. I really did. Met a fantastic bunch of people who were really encouraging, really, really supportive. As you know, I fell in love with it so much I turned it into my job. That'll tell you, that's it in a nutshell. And the famous phrase, if you love the job you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I am wholeheartedly testament to that.
Absolutely.
That's how I got into it. Eat, sleep and breathe it.
Yeah, a bit like myself. I just want to check that the closed captions are on and that's working for those that need it. Eleanor, the closed captions on for you?
Yeah.
They're working, are they?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Claire, we'll come to you next. Why triathlon?
I suppose for me it was I liked swimming. Again, similar to Eleanor, the extent of my cycling would have been a 40-minute spin class in the gym, and running wise I was pretty much, I never really ran any distance, and I just thought, why not? I like the idea of it being so diverse. You change from one thing to the next, and yeah, I just thought I'd give it a go. And I really like the idea of a team sport, but as you get older and time commitments, you kind of can't really give over time to things like that. So then I just kind of thought I'd do triathlon, thinking it was very individual, but it's completely the opposite. It's, you have so many friends from the triathlon club, but even during a race, you have people cheering you on, both competitors or people on the sideline, just clapping, wishing, willing you to get to the end. So yeah, I was hooked. I did my first triathlon in 2019 and I've never looked back. And it's funny, I always said, oh no, I'd never run a marathon, but now suddenly, like, the dream is I'd love to one day do an Ironman. So yeah, so it's just addictive, and it's just been the best thing I've ever done, and I just want to encourage people to give it a go. It's definitely worth it.
You can see the passion for the sport coming through when you're talking to us, with the smile on your face. Totally shows, no more than Eleanor. Ellen, you were climbing Kilimanjaro with some triathlon friends. How did that transfer from climbing mountains to doing swim, bike and run and doing it so well?
Basically I was climbing Kilimanjaro, and like I was talking to two girls on the hike, and they were talking about doing triathlon, the addiction of it, the high you get, but also the challenges and the high and the lows. But I was kind of like, oh, they're like to me, well, you can swim, you can cycle, and you run, why don't you combine them all together? So I got sure, why not? Take a challenge, I've never done it before, it's something new for the year. And like once you do the first triathlon, you just get hooked, and at the end of it, like you just keep wanting more and more. And I think as well, like once you see how far you come, like let's say you do an Olympic distance, and like you're like, I can't run 2 kilometers, then suddenly you're running 10 kilometers. So I think of just the addiction and seeing how far you can progress. That was how I got hooked.
And I suppose, Eleanor, one of the big things that I found and that helped me when I started out first was joining a triathlon club. And all of our panelists tonight are part of a club. And that's a hugely integral part of the team aspect of an individual sport.
110%. I suppose the big thing with clubs is it's all abilities. It doesn't matter if, like me, you're so inexperienced, you're given the same welcome. If you have done 20 Ironman triathlons, you're given the very same welcome. And even going to a race, you're never on your own. While you might travel on your own, but you will always meet up together. The club gear stands out. It creates conversation with other people as well. Oh, you're from Clonmel, or you're from Killarney, wherever. There's absolutely fantastic rapport you build with people like that. My own club offered me so much support. As I said, I went in basically blind to the sport, and from literally down to what you wear, and that's a conversation we'll probably go into in a little bit later on, but from what you wear to what kind of a bike you use, there's no one way is every way. Everybody has their own things of how they like to do things. You don't need the best of gear, you just need a bike to start, and that's really it. You'll have so many people in a club to support you. The one thing I'd say to people, don't go off feeling like you need to invest in thousands straight away. Rely on those within the club. There will be always somebody who will have an old bike, an old tri-suit, an old wetsuit. Don't feel you have to go off and invest straight away. You don't. The club is there to support you in that regard. It's definitely so much help to you going forward if it's what you get into.
I see Claire and Ellen both nodding their heads, but Claire, you moved from a social circle in Waterford and probably automatically had a new social circle when you moved to a new place in Dublin, because you had Bell Park Tri Club as your social community to support your journey in sport. But it's so much more than just sport, because of the friendship and the camaraderie that you build as part of the club.
Definitely, it's second to none, because again, the experience from everyone in the club is something that you can do 100 races. The same two people could do 100 races and they would have different things to come out with, different tips, different tricks. So like I'll always remember the time we did a big huge cycle from along Greystones and back to the clubhouse. And I was finding it hard. I first came across the term bonk, where I hit that bonk. And people, they come back to you, they talk to you, they say it's okay, this is what happens, and then you learn about fueling. So you're cycling, you don't realize you're getting through the cycle and you're learning about fueling, again, tips from that you can't. It's just invaluable experience from people in the club. So it's a really, really good thing to join a club.
I'd love to know in the chat box, have we any newbie triathletes here, or have we everybody who's done a triathlon before? So if you want to just comment in the chat box for us, it'd be great to know kind of whether you're, and just put newbie. Yeah, lovely. Rowan, welcome, newbie. So here to absolutely learn from our panel. Ellen, the girls have mentioned there, you don't have to have lots of gear to join the club, and Eleanor was saying there, you don't have to have the most expensive bike. But what gear do you need to kind of get started in triathlon as a newbie athlete?
Well, for example, when I first joined triathlon, I didn't even have a bike. So I literally went on Dundee and found a bike for literally €200. It lasted me 4 years, did a fantastic job. So I think if you have a bike and if you have shorts and a top, for running, you're sorted. Cycling, even if you buy a pair of old cycling shorts, you're doing that's a job there. And then for swimming, if you have a swimsuit, you're already there. So like as the year go over, you do like buy, let's say, wetsuits, or you might buy like more better cycling gear. But really, honestly, when you're starting off, you just need a bike, shorts, a top, and a swimsuit, and the rest will fall in place. Like you don't really need anything else after that.
And a good attitude.
Yeah, of course, absolutely, definitely.
I think from a personal perspective, when I joined Galway Tri Club back in 2009, what I personally found was I was at a different level across swim, bike and run. So every training session I went to, I actually met different people. So, you know, crap swimmer is still not great. Okay, cyclist, getting better. And running is just, you know, I came from a kind of a running background. So I was at different levels with everything that I did. And you got to meet different people. And it just opened up this whole world of opportunity. I suppose, Eleanor, people are afraid when they join a tri club that everybody's going to be more experienced than them and that they're going to be the newbie and look like the newbie and act like the newbie. But it doesn't really matter, does it?
No, every experienced person was a newbie at some stage. And that's where going into a club will really, really drive that home to you. It doesn't matter what your experience is. We're a firm believer in my own triathlon club. When we go for cycles, nobody gets left behind. And that's pretty much, I think, the attitude of every club throughout Ireland is nobody gets left behind. Your name is on your club name is on your gear for a reason. You know, it's something I'm really, really passionate about is in your club, it doesn't matter what level you are, you're still Mary, you're still Anne. It doesn't make a difference what your level is. Everybody is so encouraging of you all the time. And as Ellen alluded to already, and Claire alluded to, the amount of information you pick up off people is invaluable, you know, and that's where I learned the majority of my knowledge on triathlon is from other people. And they're absolutely fantastic. They really are. There is no cause for concern. I've been that person. I've had my hand held going into a club, and literally the next session I was waving bye to my brother going, see you later. And it's just you get engulfed into it. People are so enthusiastic and infectious for the sport that it makes it easy. It makes me want to go training. And I've never been in a situation with sport like that where I want to go. I really just prioritize my time. We're all busy, but for me, my training time, my club, it's what I want to do. And it makes it so much easier having that environment.
And Claire, as a relatively new athlete to the sport, Eleanor mentions training there, but what sort of training are you doing now? And what's your race for this year that you're really focusing on?
So I'm actually focusing on there's a half Ironman in Cork. I'm going to try and focus on that, but I'm going to do about a triathlon once a month then in the lead up to it. So Triathlon Ireland, they have all the races on the calendar. So for my training, what I was doing is I was trying to, running is probably, I find, the hardest because you're the tiredest. You're like, that's when your legs are the heaviest. So I find I've been kind of focusing on running as well. It's quite easy to go running. You literally put your shoes on and you're out the door. 24-hour gym right outside your door. You can go whenever. So I've been kind of focusing on that. Unfortunately, I got COVID there. I'm only about a week or 2 weeks recovered from that. So again, another setback, but you pick yourself up, you start again. So I'm very familiar with the whole starting from scratch. So I'm going to get back into running. Again, get cycling, and just get the legs moving and get the miles in the legs, to try and just improve fitness. And the one thing I find is that it's just about little and often. Like, you don't have to go out and run an Ironman every weekend. You don't have to do an hour-long session, even 2-hour-long sessions. It's just half an hour each day, and you just trust the process and you'll get there, and just enjoy it as well.
I think as well, people, Ellen, maybe I'll pop this question to you. You're nodding your head there about training, and I don't know whether you have a specific coach or not, but some people think that they must have a coach to do triathlon, but actually you don't have to have a coach when you're starting out. You don't have to have a coach at any time, really. You'll get a lot of support from your club. So that's another aspect that new triathletes need to be aware of. You don't have to have a coach starting out. What would you advise people kind of, getting ready for training this year, say for doing maybe a sprint triathlon in 2022? What sort of training would you be doing, or would you be advising people to do?
Well, first of all, if you're in a club, I would advise getting out and talking to them. For example, for like Tri-League, I remember last year Tri-League gave out an actual training plan for the sprint, and that was really, really helpful, I found, particularly when you're starting off. You don't know whether you don't want to be doing too little, but you also definitely don't want to be too much either. So, like the Tri-League plan you could do, let's say, you do 3 runs a week, or 3 swims a week, and 3 cycles a week. But you could do 2 or 3, and then basically, or start you off real small. You could be running 1 kilometer a week, and then in 2 weeks' time, you could be running 3 kilometers, or you could be swimming, let's say, 250 meters, and then in 4 weeks' time, you could be swimming 500 meters. I found that having a plan from Tri-League or something, or even from your club, it's a really good idea to have like an idea of like, you don't want to overload yourself too much, and you don't want to overburn yourself. So it kind of, I think, basically start off easy. Don't go, oh, I can run 5 kilometers straight away, because you end up killing yourself halfway through. So I think start off small and just keep building. So even though it may feel very hard, but just stick with the plan and just
consistency is key. That's the message I've got from both of you tonight, is from Eleanor or from Claire and from Ellen, is small and often, and consistency is key. Eleanor, I want to ask you about entering a race. What do I need to do if I want to do a race in 2022?
So you go onto the Triathlon Ireland website. You will find under the membership section, there is a little button that you can hit join on, and it will take you through step by step through there. There is different types of licenses with Triathlon Ireland. You can just get a training license whereby you just want to go to your club and train. If racing isn't the way you want to go, which is totally fine too, you can just get a training license, or you get a race license with Triathlon Ireland, which lets you race as many races as you want throughout the year. Absolutely fantastic value for people who are looking at doing races. And as Claire already said, there is races throughout the country. On the website, if you'll come up with the little Island of Ireland logo, and you can select your counties wherever you want to go, close proximity. If you know somebody living somewhere, you can filter it by that. You can filter it by the different distances for the event, times the year. Starting from in April, we have in March, we have had our duathlons, so the run bike run. Then coming more towards from May time, we'll have our triathlons, bringing us right up to the end of September. So there is plenty throughout the country. I can't tell you off the top of my head exactly how many races there is, but between the national series and other club races, you will not be short of an event near you. You could literally throw a coin anywhere on the map and you'll find a race pretty much close by. If people are stuck or not sure where to go or what the races are like, ping me an email. I'm Eleanor@triathloниreland.com. I'll try my level best to help you out with races. I'm not familiar with every race in the country, but if I'm not familiar with, I'll be able to point in the direction of somebody who would.
Brilliant. And of course, club races and even some of the commercial races as well. If you pop the race director an email, there's bound to be a race report somewhere or something on Facebook where you can find out about it. And there's lots of forums as well where you can post up. The other thing I wanted to mention for our new triathletes is that there are different distances. So you have a sprint triathlon, which is a 750 meter swim, a 20k bike and a 5k run. Olympic distance, what you'll see in Tokyo, in Paris, we saw it in London, is a standard distance race, a 1500 meter swim, a 40k bike and a 10k run. And then you move into the half Ironman distance and the Ironman distance, which are kind of double that and double that again. But what's really important to note is for the new triathletes starting out is there are often races that are called tries or a sprint, a super sprint. So a lot of people have a fear of water coming into triathlon. They can't really swim. Maybe it wasn't something they did as a child. They can cycle, yeah, no bother. They can run, no bother, with some effort, but the swimming is a big fear factor. So sometimes race directors will put on events that have a shorter swim section, but you'll still do the same amount of running and biking as well. So that's always a good one to look at as well. If you're not very confident in swimming, it's a really good one to look at. And there are lots of those as well on the TI calendar. We're nearly at the end.
Sorry, Joanne, with the swimming, it is something we come across a lot, that people have the fear of the water. What's a really, really good program is the Swim Ireland Swim for a Mile, and they tend to happen right about now. So if you look onto local sports partnerships, you'll find out information. It's called Swim for a Mile, and that's exactly what it is. They will give you a training plan. They'll get you ready to swim for a mile, and that then we see a lot of people coming from the Swim for a Mile program into our New to Try program. It's an absolutely fantastic initiative by Swim Ireland. So if people are stuck with the swimming, local sports partnerships, if you Google them or Google the Swim for a Mile, you might find one in your local area as well.
Brilliant. We are coming towards the end of the time on the panel, but I want you in 30 seconds each to give me one piece of advice for beginners. What do you wish you knew when you started out? Ellen, I'm going to come to you with that question first. So one piece of advice for beginners, what do you wish you knew when you were starting out in 30 seconds?
Yeah, so pretty much I'd hope that I shouldn't have jumped in the deep end. I should go, start off easy, enjoy the process, don't be worrying about everything, but most important, just enjoy the races.
Love it. Brilliant. Claire, we'll come to you.
I think I wish I knew little and often. Best thing, trust the process. You will improve slowly. You know, just build a habit over 3 weeks, and definitely do a race, because you will not look back. It will be the best thing you do, and you'll want to do more and more every time.
Fantastic. And Eleanor, will give the final word to you on this panel.
I have so much, but I'm going to give you the one that stands out to me the most. So if you are going for a cycle, run for 5 minutes off the bike every single time you go for a cycle. And most importantly, have fun. What's the point in doing it if it's not going to be fun?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much to our panel, to Ellen, Claire and Eleanor. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm now going to introduce our second panel of the evening. And that panel consists of Diane, Máire-Tríona, Amy and Fiona. So I'm going to invite them now to turn on their microphones and to join me this evening for our panel on those coming back to the sport after a break, or maybe more experienced triathletes. So let's give a quick introduction to our advocates. Fiona O'Donnell joining us from West Cork. She is part of West Cork Triathlon Club, a mum of 3 who works as a performance nutritionist. In 2009, Fiona was diagnosed with a kidney disease and subsequently had a transplant in 2017. Returning to the sport a couple of years later, she has embraced triathlon and been a keen advocate for women in her community. Amy O'Keefe from Cork Tri Club is a regular on the Triathlon National Series podiums around the country and one of the country's top female triathletes. Cork Tri Club's Amy O'Keefe is always one to watch. Máire-Tríona Keane will be a familiar face to many, having stood on numerous national podiums over the years, as well as representing Ireland at international age group level. A mum of 3, Máire-Tríona is an Irish and French teacher and a member of Tullamore Tri Club. And last but not least, Diane Cordner from Lisburn. She's from County Down. She was a keen triathlon spectator for a number of years before taking the plunge herself and giving it a go in 2018. And she has never looked back since. She has represented club and country on the national and international stage in recent years. Ladies, you're very welcome to our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. How are we on this fine Wednesday evening? I had to think about what day of the week it was today. All good?
Good.
Yes, great.
Yeah, looking forward to having plenty of chats. So ladies, let's get this kicked off straight away. And actually, I just want to mention Olivia McCartan is another one of the Beyond the Finish Line advocates, but unfortunately she couldn't join us tonight. I suppose, girls, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked our previous panel. Why triathlon? How did you get involved in it? And Fiona, because you're first on my screen, I'm going to go to you first.
Definitely for me, I suppose I come from, well, I say a background of running. I used to just run. And I think a lot of my friends I watched them swimming off into the distance down in West Cork and just feel really envious that I was afraid of the water and couldn't join them. So like triathlon was just this thing that was far too big and there's no way I could ever kind of try to do that. So I get that mindset, and all I wanted to do was join my friends in swimming. And once I mastered that was like, oh my God, maybe I know how to cycle a bike. I've been doing that since I was 5. Maybe I can do this. So it was, I think once you kick that first doubt, then you're away in a hack into it.
And were you dragged along to your first session, or did you go willingly?
Oh no, geez, like it wasn't, if I wanted to swim open water with the crew, then I had to actually learn how to do it in a pool, because I couldn't put my face in the water. I was afraid to put my face in the water. I was one of those, those annoying children, like who was saying to their mom in the swimming pool, they're splashing me. And the mother's going, you're in a swimming pool, get yourself together. So I was one of those, so I had to get back in the pool and learn properly in the pool in order to be able to chase my friends around the island in Lough Ine.
I love it. Amy, I'm going to come to you next. What was the reason for you getting stuck into triathlon?
So I came from a sporting background. I was running and a little bit of swimming already. But in terms of, I would have seen my parents do a lot of sport as well. My mum's big into running, and I saw my dad do an Ironman. And basically from that, I just saw the challenge. I just saw the fact there was 3 different sports. And I loved just the variety between it. And there's even 4 sports. If you go into towards, you're meant to be doing strength and conditioning as well. There's always so much going on. So it was really the variety around that. And I just loved as well, when I first started out, joining a tri club as well, and just community that were involved in it, and how supportive and how amazing everybody was. So that really, really attracted me to it.
Lovely. And Máire-Tríona, your first taste of triathlon, how did that come about?
Similar story to Fiona, really. I was a runner and I got injured, and so I started to do a bit of turbo first and then cycling on the road, and then I couldn't really swim either. So I just got the idea that I wanted to do a triathlon. I'd read some stories in the local papers about a local woman who's now a great friend of mine, who was doing triathlon, and I thought, oh wow, imagine being able to do that, and imagine being able to represent Ireland. That was like something that I never thought I'd do. So yeah, I just decided I'd like to take the challenge, and I was quite injury prone with running, so I love to do the 3 sports because gives me a chance to keep training, but not to put too much stress on any one part of my body. That was it.
Lovely. And Diane, you were standing on the sideline watching triathlon and then decided, hey, they're having way too much fun, I need to join them.
That's right. I started probably 2015 supporting my husband whenever he just had taken up triathlon, and he very quickly moved to representing Ireland at European and world level. So I think it was really these brilliant holidays that you could get out of it. So and, that really enticed me. And then, like Fiona and Máire-Tríona, I couldn't swim and didn't learn to swim until actually 2018. So while I was standing, on the sidelines for all those years, I was happy, just watching what was going on. But probably in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I think I would really love to give this a go. And there were so many people that I met through triathlon, and I'm actually going to name a couple of them, and maybe they're listening tonight. One of them is Siobhan Ladd-Greer from Newry, and the other one is June McMinn from Peninsula Triathlon Club. And those 2 ladies really, really encouraged me to give it a go. So that was it. Just had to learn to swim, and the rest's history. Never looked back.
Isn't it great to see that somebody else has inspired you to join triathlon? When you think about the stories that you've all had, you've either seen it in person, you've watched it live, you've seen your friends do something, and it's kind of driven you to, and you've come from another sport in some cases, but you've watched somebody else do something and then you've decided to follow in their footsteps. I think that's hugely powerful. Fiona? Yeah,
I mean, it's the small nudges, right? And it's not always, I mean, if you're just standing back watching, oh, there's somebody swimming, it's not necessarily just the swimming that you're watching and going, oh, well, that looks like really technical, I think I'd love to learn that skill. It's the whole bigger picture associated with it. It's even the getting up early, packing the bag, making sure everything is, and watching somebody else being so excited to go to an event, watching the debrief after an event, and you're like, oh my God, I want to talk about that corner up the hill at 23.7 kilometers. And you're like, you've no idea what they're talking about, but you really want to be involved, So I think it's the bigger picture. It's being involved in the whole thing and not just the technical aspect of the individual elements,
Yeah, it's the coffee and cake spin, it's the fun, it's running around the track, nearly puking your guts out at training sessions, and then just talking about the splits that you did. Amy, would I be right in saying that?
Absolutely. But it's everything, I think. And it's as well, just even going back to in terms of inspiring, and, all of us had somebody who inspired us to do this. And I think that's a big part of, even like for me anyway, even applying and as part of the advocate program, to have somebody there that, you can put a face to a name, or, face to a voice, and you can see that it is possible. And it is like, although like, you know, first triathlon, it can seem quite daunting. We've all been through it. And no matter what, even if, you know, I'm on the start line, you can see one of us that is there, or see someone from triathlon, anybody actually, even as part of a club, you can always just have that one comment being like, oh, that first buoy is so far away. Like, how am I going to get there? And somebody will always come in and comment and say, you'll be fine. Like, don't worry about it, just stay on my feet or something. So I think it's a big part of that. And really that's the community that we have.
I think as well, as a sport of 3 disciplines, and I mentioned this during the week, it's actually quite hard to juggle all the training and the different aspects of it, and then add in life and kids and everything to do with it. Máire, how do you manage life, training, representing Ireland at international level, and working full time as well? Any tips for our athletes that are listening in tonight?
Well, I suppose I'm struggling at the moment because I have an almost 8-month-old, a 3-year-old, and a 5-year-old. So yeah, it's just at the moment I'm kind of wondering how. But I suppose it's just to reduce your expectations of like how many sessions you can do at certain points in your life. You know, you mightn't be able to do like a lot of swimming, a lot of cycling, a lot of running, but if you can just do some cycling, some swimming, and some running every week, and just, as the girls were saying earlier, just try and be consistent with that, and accept that your life at one point is not the same as someone else who can fit in maybe a lot more at that point, and just try and be consistent and little and often. And I think that's the way to go, really.
There's a lot of talk about, I suppose, coming back. I suppose this panel is about coming back to the sport, or overcoming adversity, or overcoming injury. Diane, how did you deal with the year, I suppose the 2 years we had really with COVID and the pandemic, and overcoming that, and staying focused with your sport when there wasn't an awful lot of racing or an awful lot of activity happening? It's not like you could go and kick a ball and have a game of GAA. You needed to have somebody put on a race for you to be able to test yourself and to do stuff.
Well, probably with 2020, whenever everything closed down, you know, I really just jumped onto Zwift, like probably most people. I suppose our restrictions for distance wasn't as bad in the north as it was in the south. So, you know, we could go out, you know, on the road on the bikes for a certain distance, and the same with the running. You know, it was just actually keeping myself motivated, and I was actually doing some of the virtual triathlons and duathlons, which were online. Then whenever we sort of got into 2021, my training was coming on really well. You know, the clubs were starting to meet back again. The swimming pools at that stage were still closed, so it was a lot of open water swimming. And then mid 2021, actually in August 2021, I got COVID, and I'm still suffering from long COVID. So 7 months later, and my training has just basically, you know, I had to shelve it for quite a few months. I was at the stage where it was really my breathing and the heart rate that has been affected. So it's just building it up slowly again. So running, which would have been my background, was really walk and jog, and it was more walking than jogging. So that I've just had to build that up. And swimming, I haven't been swimming for the 7 months at all. And the bike, I wasn't able to get out on the road. Again, it was just on Zwift. Doing everything was actually zone 1. So I've just been focusing on what I can do rather than what I used to be able to do and what I can't do, because, you know, you'd go crazy, you know, thinking, you know, I was able to do this 2 years ago and now I can't. So I set myself a challenge that I would really want to try and do one of the duathlons this year. So last Saturday went down to Naas, and it was just a matter of, I've made it to the start line and I'm definitely going to make it to the finish line, no matter how long it takes. And I actually surprised myself. I was absolutely delighted. Now, the run was slow. It wasn't pretty. It was, you know, it was hard work. And the bike, it was challenging as well. But the main thing was, I was there, and, you know, I survived it, and I'm just taking it a day at a time. I will get there. And, you know, it's just focusing really on what I can do at the minute as opposed to what I can't.
Well, congratulations on getting to the start line and the finish line.
Thank you.
That is a win, no matter what happens after that. And it's actually about the process as well, isn't it? It's about, you know, because we can sometimes think that triathlon can be really competitive, but the only person you're competing against is yourself and your own ability. Now, I know there is the bigger picture for some of our pointy-ended, top of the podium athletes, but for the majority of us, it's actually just to celebrate getting to a start line is as big a win as getting to a finish line. Fiona, you overcame big adversity when you had that kidney disease and had that transplant, and then you had big plans in 2021 for Barcelona, and it didn't happen. I mean, how do you bounce back from that? We've seen how Diane has kept the consistency, zone 1 training, she kept the goal, kept the focus. But you very much were, I suppose, detailing your journey to this big Ironman in Barcelona, where you were going to have the race of your life, and it just happened.
I was, you know, I was so fit. Like, I was so fit. It was fantastic, and I felt absolutely great. And a couple of weeks before Barcelona, I think it was probably about a month before Barcelona, actually, we were going to do an Olympic distance. And, you know, one of those kind of Olympic distance where you go, yeah, sure, feck it, we'll keep going, will we? So we had the kind of the half iron distance, and then about 15k into the run, I was going, I should probably, you know, recovery might not be great if I keep doing the full half. So like, we did just over a kilometre swim, we did our half iron bike on a really windy day. We about 16k run, and I was like, I was on top of the world, apart from a little bit of just reflux from whatever jellies I'd had on the bike. And a couple of days afterwards, I was going for a bike, and everything just started falling apart. It's like the wheels just started coming off the buggy, you know. And actually what I discovered was it was down to massive hypertension and all these cramps I kept having. Like, it was, you know, when you're at the top of a really big climb and you're giving your last bit, because if you stop, you'll just fall over the side of the bike. I was like that all the time. And what I discovered was my medication that I take to stop me from rejecting my kidney was causing a big magnesium depletion. So it was something really, really simple that could have been managed if I was just supplementing with magnesium. It's really simple, but it took me a really long time to come back from that. So I just started back, like Diane said, you know, I mean, you can't go back to that space where you're going, this is what I used to be able to do, because it's so infuriating, it's so frustrating. And there was that big fear about getting back to running as well, and the big fear about getting back on the bike, because what if it hurts again? What if I can't do it? So I just started going out for a run, or for a walk, actually, a 20-minute walk, and then saying, right, I'll do a 20-second jog in the middle of that walk. And you jog for 20 seconds and you'd be kind of like, oh, did that hurt, or was that okay? No, that was actually okay. Sure, in a minute when my breathing comes back to normal, I'll do it again. So that's how I started back. And then I managed to get out for like a 7.5 minute 1 kilometer run. I was nearly ready for the Olympics, lads. And I was there like, this is it, I'm back. And I'm going to start running again over Christmas. This is wonderful. Then I got COVID. And then I started recovering from COVID. And then I was like, yes, okay, I'm back. So I went for my run, and then I got shingles. So so it's like the gods are screaming out to me, just get back in the water, Fiona. It'll all be fine. Just get back in the water. Because I've been avoiding the cold water. But yeah, so that's where we are currently. And all you can do is just keep going back to it. Just keep going back to it. Start at the
it's almost like you're going back to the start again every time, but it's getting back to the start.
You're not.
Yeah,
exactly, and just doing it. Yeah.
Amy, what are the races you're planning for 2022, and how have you prepared over the past 2 years for this season, where we're now let out of the traps to go absolutely mad in 2022 with a race season?
I'm so ready for this race season. Like, I think to Diane's point around the Zwift, I think we've had enough time on Zwift now, so we're ready to be out in the road.
Don't knock it. Don't knock it. A lot of us are much better, fitter cyclists because of it.
Absolutely, I'm not knocking it at all. I think it's just, I'm so ready to have a race in person, to be able to see people again. And I think certainly for 2022, I think for me anyway, trying to get back into the national series, trying to get back in and travel and see people and see the country again. And to be honest, I'm just excited to get back into it. So certainly for the last 2 years, it's been, as I said, it's been Zwift, it's been fantastic. So I think the clubs have definitely put on a huge amount, even in terms of the virtual 5Ks and trying to get people together, and it's been absolutely fantastic. But I think I'm looking forward to this season and being able to see people again.
You're ready to hit the road running.
Absolutely.
Máire-Tríona, what about for you, an 8-month-old baby at home? Will we be back to racing in 2022, do you think?
I'm just laughing because I'm definitely not like Amy. I'm not ready for race season whatsoever. But my aim is to get back to club races, to our own club races here in Tullamore, and hopefully by the end of the season that I might make it to a race somewhere else. But logistics with the baby and 3 and a 5-year-old is kind of, it's busy, and even getting things into the car is crazy. But I just want to get strong and feel healthy and fit to some degree again, and be part of the club and the social side of it there, and hope that I can get to see the rest of you somewhere by the end of the season.
I think that's one of the big important things, and definitely towards the end of last season, when we did get back to racing a bit, it was so good to see people in person. Yes, I absolutely love Zwift, and I love the Watt Fest that Triathlon Ireland put on, and the different races that were happening on Zwift, and that online camaraderie and community. And the girls talked about it earlier about or Fiona, you mentioned it earlier actually, about the post-race analysis of like the power and the watts and everything. But there was nothing like turning up to a race and actually going, oh my God, is that the girl that was on Zwift? Oh, I have to go talk to her, and all these, it was like these whole other communities outside of our clubs that we might never have actually met or connected with. But now we have these additional social outlets or people. And as you say, you could be standing alone at the middle of on your own at the start of a race, but you're not actually on your own, because you're in the same pod as everybody else, and you're like, geez, I'm not looking forward to those waves today, or that boy looks very far away, and somebody will start to talk to you. So don't ever be too shy at the start line of a race. A quick one now, girls, before we move to our main panel and bring back our other 3 advocates, our 2 advocates and Eleanor. As with the first panel, I want to ask you individually, what do you wish you knew when you started that you now know? Fiona, I'm going to pop to you again just because you're on the top of the screen for me here.
Yeah, I think my one of the barriers to me joining initially was because I thought you had to have it all. Like, in order to join a triathlon club, you must be able to swim, you must be able to bike, you have to know all the rules about biking and bike etiquette. Yeah, the whole idea of joining a club is to learn. And so I wish I hadn't let my fear hold me back from that, really. Yeah.
That's a good answer. Amy?
I think one of the previous panels said this as well, but I'm going to resonate with it in terms of not needing all of the fancy gear. I think for sure, although I love it, and I love getting into the techie bits and learning more about it, I definitely think it was Ellen that said it, you don't need a big fancy bike, you don't need like these fancy shoes or the clip-ins or anything to get started. So for me, definitely I'd love to have known that at the start, and definitely not being afraid to ask people about it as well. If you see something cool and you're interested in it, definitely ask about it as well.
That's a key thing as well, isn't it? Really, just asking the questions. Don't be shy and just ask the questions, because we are all in it together. At the end of the day, this is a very supportive community. Even though when we're racing, it might be ferocious, but actually off the racing, it's a very supportive community. Diane, what do you wish you had known when you started out?
Probably having enough nutrition on the bike. I think it was Claire had mentioned about being on a bike ride and experiencing her first bunk. Well, I know exactly what that's like too. So it's just making sure you have enough food with you. You know, if there doesn't happen to be a coffee stop, at least if you have a power bar or something in your back pocket, you have something to fall back on. So definitely having enough nutrition when you're out training.
Brilliant. And then Máire, I keep calling you Máire-Tríona, but I fear it's Máire-Tríona.
No, Máire-Tríona, yeah.
Let's make sure I have it right. It'd be terrible if you came across the finish line and I got that name wrong.
Thanks. I think just if you don't have much time, that's okay. You don't have to spend hours and hours and hours training. If you don't have that time, every 30 minutes counts. And in the beginning, I thought I have to have at least an hour to train or else it's not worthwhile. But just use every few minutes that you have, and you don't have to kill yourself all the time as well. Every training session doesn't have to be a race. Just enjoy your zone 1 and 2 or your aerobic training. And that's as important as the higher intensity.
Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic, ladies. I think it's time we bring in our previous 3 panelists. We're just coming up to 2050. We are on the clock. If there was a stopwatch here now, I would be getting full marks for keeping us to time. Those of you joining us tonight as guests of the webinar, do make sure to pop your questions now into the Q&A box for us. And if you want to pass on any nice messages to our panelists, you can pop them through in the chat. So we welcome Claire, Ellen and Eleanor back. Ellen, I'm going to ask you just to unmute yourself so you're ready for the questions when they come. Okay, so this is a question, I don't mind who takes it. Do you have any tips for keeping up motivation during training? And maybe if we just pick one tip from everyone, you know, I suppose, Diane, I'm going to come to you first because you had to come back from being extremely fit and strong and potentially looking at representing club and country on the international stage. And then suddenly it's COVID. You're not training at the same level you were at. How do you get yourself picked up out of the bed every day now to go and do your zone 1 training? We'll start with you first, maybe, and then we'll work our way around the panel.
Okay, well, I think it's just really, you know, focusing on what you can do. And like, to be honest, you will get there. So if you're doing, you know, just build everything up gradually. So I really have from now until September, you know, to get my fitness level back to where it was. I'm not going to rush it. I'll take my time at it because sort of my aim for this year is the European Championships in Bilbao for the duathlon. So I'm really looking forward to that. So it's just building everything up gradually, and, you know, don't beat yourself up about it either. You know, just you have to be positive and just look forward and you know, take it easy. And I think the importance too is rest days. I've really found that, you know, I could have got by just with 1 rest day before, and I mean, after Saturday's duathlon, today was the first that I was able to do anything. So I mean, I was never used to having to take 2 rest days, but it's just, you know, listen to your body would be my main tip for that. Definitely listen to your body.
Okay, Ellen, can I ask you the same question? Tips for keeping up motivation during training?
I think for me anyway, I'm working from home, so like you're sitting at a desk for like 9 to 5. So like my motivation for the day is knowing that in the evening you're gonna get out either for the fresh air or you're gonna go on a bike or you're gonna run. It's just kind of like a bit of headspace and stuff like that. And also I think as well, I have a race, so like I always use the race like my end goal. So I keep figuring like, okay, do the training, I'll be so much better for the race, or so like my way of keeping motivated.
Brilliant. Claire, you're nodding your head there. I'm going to come to you next.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Diane and Ellen. Don't get bogged down on what you can't do. Just focus on what you are doing. Definitely remember why you're doing it. So if it's to get fit, remember that race that you have planned. Remember, or if you've never done one before, just know that we're telling you the feeling you'll have when you're doing the race is amazing. Or if you have done it before, just remember that feeling of how good it feels to run across that finish line and to even during the whole race. So just try and remember why you're doing it in the first place, and you'll never regret a training session. So just do it and then assess it after.
Brilliant. Máire-Tríona?
Yeah, just try to get started like every day. Try to get yourself either out the door for your run or onto the bike or onto the turbo, and say to yourself, okay, I'm just going to do 20 minutes or whatever it is. And then probably once you get out the door or you get on the turbo, you'll say, oh, sure, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe I'll stay on for another 10 minutes, or, you know, maybe I'll be able to do another half hour. And by the time you realize that you'll probably have what you were going to do in the first place done, even though you didn't feel like doing it. So it's just to get yourself going, and you'll probably feel okay once you get started. And if you don't, well, that's okay.
Yeah, the first steps are always the hardest.
Yeah,
getting on those runners. Fiona, will come to you next. For
just looking for looking for the tiny wins. I think, you know, certainly from my own perspective, it's getting the extra few seconds in a run walk, or even if you do the same, even if you only get out for 15 minutes, comparing it to yesterday and do I feel better? Does it feel easier today? And acknowledging them. Like, I have a training diary there for run walks. You wouldn't see it in an Olympic panelist. Like, it's so like, these are the wins. And you can look back at it and go, oh my God, look where I was. You know, that definitely works for me anyway.
Brilliant. Amy?
I'd be very similar to Fiona as well. For me, it's the small goals, like even each training session, setting yourself something. Certainly during COVID, it's been the Wednesday sessions with Triathlon Ireland in terms of the Zwift racing, being even as part of that, and you know, setting yourself little targets, even weekly or monthly or whatever it is that suits. That's really just kept trying to keep my motivation up throughout the last while, and definitely going for it.
And Eleanor, the final tip from you.
I suppose what keeps me motivated is that feel-good factor you get when you come in the door. Hail, rain or shine, I know it's harder when it is hail and rain, but when you get out there and you come back, I'm telling you, it doesn't matter what the weather is, you'll still be smiling because you did it. Even if it's half an hour, you still did it. And that's the pat on the back that will help you realize tomorrow I can go again tomorrow.
Yeah, I love
winter
it.
miles and summer smiles and all that.
This is it. I love it. Well, I hope we got that question answered for you. Somebody asking here, I'm a beginner. How much strength and conditioning training should I be doing? It's hard to fit in this in the time that we have allotted. Diane, I'm going to come to you. I know you are a Triathlon Ireland coach, so I'm going to pop that question to you to see you nodding your head to answer the question for me. So really, I think, Amy, you mentioned it earlier, it's like the fourth discipline, and it's the one that none of us ever really want to do because we want to swim, bike and run, but it is so important, Diane, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's something that a lot of us actually neglect, and it does help, you know, with injury prevention. I actually would do 15 minutes a day, and you know, perhaps one day it might be on focusing on arms, or another day it might be focusing on your core, or another day focusing on, you know, hips and glutes. And the reason I'm saying 15 minutes, you know, it's quite easy to find 15 minutes in a day, maybe whenever you get up in the morning, or even while the kettle's boiling. There's no reason why you can't be doing your squats while you're waiting on the kettle boiling. You'll always find a few minutes for something like that. And it's probably easier than, you know, to do it 15 minutes rather than find, you know, a full hour in the day, because you're trying to, you know, work-life balance, you know, get kids fed, you're maybe working full time. So if you could try and get 15 minutes, that definitely would be helpful.
Again, it's about consistency, really, Diane, isn't it? Getting it in every day, those little bits. Yeah. We've lots of questions coming in, a couple on cycling generally, so I'm going to just paraphrase them. One of them is, how do I get faster on the bike? The other one is a hybrid or road bike for a complete beginner. I would suggest a road bike rather than a hybrid, just to allow you to have that little bit of extra pace. So there's a question about how do I get faster for cycling? It's all about the training. You need to cycle your bike to get faster, you need to run to get faster, you need to swim to get faster. So there is a lot of thing around that. And then somebody mentions the weather in Ireland has been absolutely horrendous for the past couple of weeks. What do we do? Well, you'd have heard us mention about Zwift. So it's just one of many training platforms. If you can get yourself a turbo trainer, Eleanor, do you want to come in there and talk maybe a little bit about the Triathlon Ireland Zwift League, but also then just the basics around a turbo, because not everybody will go out and want to buy a smart turbo to allow them to be on Zwift. So it's catering for everybody. I know we do have the TI turbo sessions weekly as well, so maybe
that's what I was going to get to, Joanne. So my colleague Gary Cross, and some of you may be familiar with him, runs a turbo class 3 times a week. I think one is very early in the morning. I think it could be a Tuesday, then an afternoon session and a session on a Saturday morning. And if any of you guys know Gary, you know that you're guaranteed to come away laughing as well as sweating. But that's one way of doing it. So you don't need any fancy pants turbo. You can spend absolute any amount of money on a turbo, but you literally, the most basic of basic ones, even if you don't have one and you have just a normal stationary bike that you would use in the gym, that's absolutely fine as well. As long as you're pedaling, you don't need anything else. You'll be flying it.
Okay, somebody asking here about transitions and getting faster at them, and specifically as well asking, if you're not a member of a club, how do you get faster? I'm going to answer that question and then ask somebody to jump in as well. It's just like swim, bike and run. You got to practice. Minimal amount of kit on the floor in transition. You have to practice. So as Eleanor mentioned, every time you come off the bike, you go for a 5-minute brick run. That's another thing in triathlon that can be quite confusing. It's all the terminology. We've had zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, brick runs. We've had DOMs. Do we have DOMs? Do we know what DOMs are? And all the terminology as well, and transitions. So there's lots of terminology to learn. So maybe, Eleanor, we might do up a fact sheet if we don't have it already, and some of the terminology would be quite good as well for some of our new athletes. But for transition, it's practice. So it's all practice. Amy, do you want to talk to me a little bit about getting fast at transition?
Yeah, I think it's for all of us. It's one of those things, as you said, Joanna, you need to practice. And I think it can go from trying to get the wetsuit off. Everybody's going to have their own little tips and tricks for this. So some people decide to put, like, you can put baby oil under the wetsuit. Some people don't like that. There's Vaseline. There's loads of different things that you can do, even getting onto the bike. So there's something called a flying mount, which means your bike shoes are already on the bike and you can hop onto the bike and then pedal. I've tried it a couple of times. Yeah, you need to practice that one, and practice that one around where something's soft, because sometimes I've certainly known it, I've fallen off and trying to get onto it. But there are different ways that you can do it, and it's the same with flying dismounts, same kind of concept. You leave your shoes on the bike, but there's multiple ways to get faster at it. And again, as I said, a lot of people have their own tips and tricks, but really it is just practice, practice, practice. And it's very easy to set up a transition zone at home, Máire-Tríona, isn't it? So you can go out, so forget about the swim section maybe for a minute, because that's a little bit harder if you're trying to do it off a pool-based swim. But say your bike run transition, you can spray a line in your garden and
or the road,
get on your bike. Yeah.
Or if you live in an apartment block, if you have an underground car park or something, really easy to just have your bike there, and you don't have to be doing a long run off it. You know, you don't have to be going for a proper run. You can just be practicing getting on and off the bike, doing a little loop around wherever you have your bike, around the car park or whatever, even if you don't have a garden. So any place that you have where your bike can be just safe there beside you, and you can set up your transition.
Yeah, absolutely. And those quick release laces on your runners, and no socks. The question is, do you wear socks? Don't you wear socks? Do you wear a two-piece? Do you wear a tri-suit? So there's lots of different things that you can do on transition. Maybe that's another thing we can focus on another night, is getting our transitions a little bit faster. I'm conscious that we've just come up beyond 9 o'clock tonight, so I'm sorry I didn't get to everybody's question. But if you have a question and you want to pop it through to Joanna or to Eleanor that didn't get answered tonight, I'm sure they will find the answer for you. I'm going to bring Joanna back in again to do the final thank yous, but on behalf of myself, just to say a huge thank you to have the privilege of being part of this panel tonight and hosting it, and to say a huge thank you to Triathlon Ireland for bringing us all together. I've certainly been inspired by what I've heard tonight, so thank you so much.